Box now. It's time for fresh rubber. Welcome. This is apparently late breaking. It's a show where we're going to cover all things motorsports, including F1. I've got here Gavin Turnbull. Great to have you, Gav. How are you going?
Great to be here. Sunny day in Sydney today. Unlike last week. Yeah, we really tasted all the weather down in Melbourne, didn't we? From the scorching heat of qualifying in the windless, shadeless track at Albert Park to torrential rain on the day.
It was 4 seasons in one weekend.
Classic Melbourne, classic Melbourne.
So I thought it'd be good to talk about attending our first race, since that was the first time we'd ever been to an F1 race. Then I thought we could cover any storylines that came up over the weekend and how the weekend progressed. We could talk about the race, how entertaining that was. And then anything that we'd like to track through the rest of the season, knowing that the Chinese Grand Prix is upon us already. So no rest for the wicked, even though it's been a long break between the end of last season and the start of this season. We're straight back into it. So
how many races do we have this year?
I'm going to say 1,000.
It feels like that. It probably feels like that for the drivers, doesn't it?
Completely.
Great for the fans.
Completely. And this weekend is the weekend. We are currently recording on Saturday the 22nd, so this is the Chinese Grand Prix weekend, and there's a sprint race that I think is already finished. So goddamn, it's moving at rapid speed, which I think is a good segue to being trackside, because there's a huge difference from watching the cars go around on screen and being there as they hurtle past at incredibly dangerous looking speeds.
And I think you've been a F1 fan a little bit longer than me, or you certainly, maybe we came back to F1 at the same time, but this was your first race?
Absolutely.
Thoughts?
So, you know, sometimes on the broadcast, they'll say things like to drive in anger, or Martin Brundle will sometimes say it's a bit scary. When you're watching it on the broadcast, it seems fast, yes, but it doesn't seem scary. Actually, being trackside gave me the truth of that. And the other thing that they say sometimes is you can see the car's body language as they're going around the circuit. And these phrases have often seemed quite abstract to me, didn't quite get what they meant. But actually being there and watching the cars go around, especially in the practice sessions and in quali, where there is the circumstance where you get slow car, fast car going side by side, or a car that might be doing a warm-up prep lap and then doing a hot lap. And you really do see the difference between a car that's just cruising around, a car that's doing prep work, and a car that is giving it full send.
Yeah, I mean, I felt exactly the same. I mean, I met you on a bench under a tree, under some shade, and we made our way to the track, and I could hear the cars. But when I stood for the first time and felt one go past, I'll give you my honest emotion. I was overwhelmed with humility, with the bravery of these drivers. That's what I felt. I thought, this is what you do. And to feel them rumble past at that pace, it kind of blew my mind. It, like you say, I've watched it on TV for years and years, but to feel it, I was just enamored by the courage that these gentlemen and women in the female races must have to drive at that pace. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the sound, we talked about this on the day. In my mind, it was going to be meow. But this regulation of cars is guttural, it's earthy, it's heavy metal, and the smell of the floor plates, or whatever, the acrid smell, it smells exactly like a burnt out clutch, and it's like, oh my gosh, it was amazing.
So did you have the experience when you were walking over the footbridge to get into the security area to get into the park, of cars going around on the circuit?
No, I didn't. It was as I set foot grass that I began to do. Yeah.
When I got there on the Saturday morning, the F3 race, the sprint race, was happening. And so as you get off the tram down on St Kilda Road and you start coming along the little street to get to the footbridge, you can hear it. And it's in the distance, but it's very present. And as you get closer and closer, you climb over the bridge, you go through the thing, your excitement starts to build. And as you come up to the back of that grandstand near the Turn 910 complex, it sort of becomes louder, and you get up to the hill, and it's just a whole build-up and experience, the sound part of it. And then also, as they go past you so fast, there's a sort of a whoosh thing that happens. and it's gone before you know it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I think Brendan, who was there with us, made this comment to me at the time, you don't want to be on the inside of a corner. You want to be on the outside of the corner so you can see the car sort of coming towards you, turning, and then going away from you. So that's the way you get the best sort of aspect of these machines as they go around. Whereas if you're on the inside of the corner, they seem like they're just going in a straight line, even though they are turning. It really underplays what it's like to do that thing.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Amazing. Okay, so thinking about the weekend then, was there anything that stood out to you from Saturday to Sunday that you thought was either surprising or joyful?
It's a great question. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Surprising or joyful?
Let me remind you. Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari.
That was quite joyful. I mean, it's not to hark on about this, but just to go back to your point, the difference between watching a 2-hour race build up with the grid walk, with, you know, Martin, with all the kind of the Ted's notebook and all the bells and whistles, you feel in that 2 hours of build up and 2 hours of race, and then listen to all the commentary, you feel part of something, and you feel like you get a read on their faces. Are people looking nervous as they climb into their car? You get those beautiful close-ups on the eyes. You get all the pundits giving their opinion. Being at track, you get absolutely none of that. My phone didn't work because there's, how many people were there? 120,000 people on the day or something like that. You can fact check me on that, but you get none of that. There's no visualization, there's no emotion. You see a red car go past with a yellow helmet, you're like, that's Hamilton. But that's all you get until you get home and watch the whole thing again. So such a difference to like feeling those feelings that you do when you watch it on TV. It's a different animal, it's a different experience. I love them both. I will say my top tip to anyone going to see a GP is make sure, if you're in the cheap seats like us, the general pass, make sure you can see a screen, because I can't. In the quali, we didn't stand in front of a screen, and I had my phone up with live track times. At the race, we found an incredible spot. Was it turn 6?
The longest turn ever, which is turn 8.
The longest turn ever. It was turn 8. And we were standing in front of a screen so we could indulge in all that. I don't know who does the broadcast, Sky Sports. Like, we could indulge in understanding what was going on in the race. So that would be my takeaway.
The other surprising takeaway for the race was when you watch it on TV and you look at the driver tracker, or you look at the timing column, and it says 1.22510.
Does the intervals between drivers rather than the overall interval?
On the track screen that we had there, it just did the gap to leader, which is not very useful.
It's so
you have to
unhelpful.
do a lot of mental maths. But then also, the thing that I think is misleading about the TV broadcast is what that actually looks like in real life. So you might say, he's only 3 seconds behind, he's catching, that's awesome. But actually, when you're at the track, considering how fast they go by, 3 seconds is 1, 2, 3, and it's such a big gap in real life compared to what you see on the TV broadcast.
Well, yeah, and on the TV you get these incredible shots from the helicopter that track with a car for a prolonged period of time. The overhead cannot be underestimated in the pleasure of watching GP. Fascinating. I'll tell you one other thing, Jason, that really stood out to me is because you can't hear the commentary, and it wasn't my usual Sky Sports favourites. It was a couple of Australians who did very well. No dissing there, but I did miss my usual people. You get to know them. You get to know their slight biases. You get to know what winds them up about what drivers do or what they get excited about. You couldn't hear a thing. You could barely hear the commentary. And I'll give you an example of this. I didn't know why Ferrari ended up in the position why Hamilton ended up in the position he did until I got home. And Jen said, Ferrari, the tactics. Are we going back 2 years to where they messed up every tactic in the book? Lewis, she said to me, and I don't know if this is true, by the way, but she's like, Lewis should have been on the podium, but they messed up. I had no idea why 1 minute towards the end he was in P1. and then he finished the race in P10. And so you miss out a little bit of that unless, I don't know, unless you've got your little headphones in. Maybe we should have had radio on or something. I don't know.
It's a good point. And I think the reality of it...
Did you know that was going on? Were you aware of that?
I did see that he pitted a second time, but
okay.
I also was optimistic about Hamilton finishing further up than he did, and was disappointed when it didn't happen. But I think also one of the storylines for the weekend was Hamilton and Ferrari getting to know each other and figuring out how to work together. There were times on the broadcast where he asked for information that he wasn't getting, or he was getting too much information and he didn't want it. At times he said, I'm not needing that information now. I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone. And so...
I'm guessing you've seen the memes that have come from that.
Actually, you know, I haven't really been... I've stayed away from F1 media in the last few days, in part because of this. Because I want to come into this with my reflections and observations more so than the internet. But tell me about the memes. I'm keen.
Well, I can tell you that the biggest meme that came out of the Melbourne GP was a cut together of the 5 or 6 times Lewis was telling his race engineer, I know, leave me alone. I'm, you know, and there was people, it's very funny to listen to Lewis telling his race engineer 5 times, yeah, stop talking. I know that. Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. It's very funny. And interestingly, there was some pushback of, oh, how petulant is Lewis? And he actually responded to that and said, look, I didn't swear. I was just, we're learning how to communicate. And, you know, I was telling him that I knew that already and I didn't need to be informed about, and it gave you a real insight, Jace, into the relationship Lewis would have had with Bono. Like, it would have been one way he got the information that he needed, and perhaps Science, or it was, I don't know if Lewis is now race engineering with Science, but he doesn't want that information. He doesn't need that information, and it's a distraction to him. And I thought that was a very interesting insight that, oh gosh, like, that is the nuance of a relationship between a driver and an engineer. I do want information. I need information from you, but this is what I want and this is how I want it.
And also in a crucible, they're both in a high stakes, cannot waste a second situation. And the pit wall has information that Lewis doesn't, and vice versa. And there will always be times where one of them will say, you didn't give me what I needed at the time, or you gave me too much in the moment. And it really is about finding that happy medium between those two extremes. I remember lots of Ferrari memes about we're checking, you know?
We're checking.
We're checking, and we'll come back to you next week. And I think you've seen that many times before with Ferrari. This is not going to be an uncommon situation throughout the year, I would say. And there are lots of rookies coming onto the grid as well who will need to come up to speed quickly and have very much the same challenge. Case in point being Antonelli, who's now being race engineered by Bono. There's very much a case of getting to know you is the dynamic for at least that first Grand Prix. And I could imagine that happening again in the next few races at least, while things bed in.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So would you say you didn't have a good sense of the race just because you were trackside? That was one of the downsides to being trackside, is the race becomes a bit more abstract.
100%. 100%. You're trading, like I said, unless you've got Brundle in your ear, you've got commentary in your ear, you are trading that, and that is fine because it was it's a completely other experience. And I thought what was interesting in my response was I loved it, but then I wanted to go home and watch the race on the TV as well, like just to firm in what I'd seen and to understand it better. And that's an interesting puzzle to put back together. Your lived experience, and then all the information to fill in your questions.
Yeah. So the race I found also was a little bit dull around the midway point. You know, there was the early race chaos as poor Isaac Hadjar found his way to an early exit. In fact, he did not start that race. That was his classification. He had a DNS. So his first true race will come this weekend in China. And it was lovely seeing Anthony Hamilton with the arm around Isaac walking back through the paddock. So there was the early chaos with that, and with Science going off on the first lap and Doohan as well. And then things settled down for a bit where Piastri was chasing Norris, overtook Verstappen, chasing down Norris, and then had a bit of a scruffy moment, I think, coming through turn 6, turn 7. and then had to back off. And then all hell broke loose when Fernando Alonso found himself in the wall. After that, it was all up in the air. There was late drama with the safety car and then with some rain that was coming across the circuit.
It was everything you want from a wet race. I think this is what a wet race should be. I heard rumours that Mercedes had someone down on St Kilda Beach on the bay watching for rain, which is why they were able to effectively respond. I've heard about this before, Jace, that teams will post people miles away to say when they feel the first drizzle of rain. I don't know if Ferrari did that. By the looks of it, probably not. I think that's quite an interesting thing to do. But this is what you want from a wet race. You want to see drivers challenged to keep a car on track in incredibly difficult situations.
Yeah, and the first race of the season, under conditions like that, on a track that's essentially unforgiving. This is not Paul Ricard, where there's endless runoff around the circuit. This is driving between two very closely placed together sets of barriers. And not only that, it is a street circuit. So we've got these wonderful white painted lines that introduce the element of chaos going around a corner.
The white lines was the thing, right? Stay off the white lines.
But
it's like do not go into the deep dark woods. It was kind of you will meet your end on the white lines.
But you also that the visibility in these cars is so low. So how are they meant to know? Yeah. Do you know that where they have the grid starting boxes, they've got these little yellow lines to the side. In 2023, when they introduced the ground effect car regulations, they had to extend those because they also had bigger tyres, and the drivers just couldn't see where they were meant to park. So imagine getting yourself a penalty because you didn't park in the right spot simply because you can't see it. So I have sympathy there, especially when it's going around the track in those conditions. They hadn't done that. They'd only had a few sighter laps before the race even started. So again, Sainz and Hadjar, my sympathy goes out to them because they didn't cover themselves in glory at that time. But to be honest, none of the rookies, aside from Antonelli, showed off what they could do this weekend. They all had difficulties left, right and centre.
Yeah, Antonelli is already proving himself to be one of Toto's best decisions. I think, have you watched the sprint yet?
I haven't seen the sprint. I've only seen sprint qualifying.
Okay, we'll not tell you what happens, but there's a kind of a sense of kind of all is well in the universe to me that Antonelli was chosen by Toto and that Lewis went to Ferrari. I think for both of those drivers, it's proved out to be good decisions from those involved in making them. Antonelli, I know that you're a fan. I don't know much about him, and he looks like a teenager. I mean, he is a teenager. I think he didn't have he couldn't drive a car legally on the road last year when Drive to Survive were filming their slightly questionable TV show. We won't get too much into that. There's been a lot of commentary on that recently.
I got love for Drive to Survive because it's what brought me into the sport. But I think
you were into it before that. You were into it when you were a kid, right? And then kind of came back to it.
Yeah, but I don't really count those days as bona fide F1 fandom days. They were more like, ooh, boom, boom, red car go around the track real fast.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Yeah, it brought me into Can I tell you how I was in a car going on a team building weekend away for work. And the guy, my mate John, was driving the car, and I said, "Have you watched anything good on TV recently?" I said to him, "I've got nothing to watch. I've watched all the stuff I want to watch." He said, "Oh, give Drive to Survive a go." And I said, "Is that about Formula One?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I have got zero interest in watching cars do 60 or 70 laps around a circuit. I can't think of anything more boring." And he just looked at me and said, "Give it a watch, see what you think." So I watched the first season of Drive to Survive, and I'm not embarrassed to say I was within weeks. We binged it. My wife and I binged it. Within weeks, we were watching it we wouldn't miss a race. Like, we would avoid social occasions to watch F1. We were obsessed overnight. So I agree with you, Drive to Survive, although it seems to be a bit dubious these days in terms of the way they're stitching stories together. It was my gateway drug.
I think if we had been F1 fans at the time, we would have said the same thing about DTS. But fair dues, it's the gateway drug that got me into the sport. So, I can't look at it with too many criticisms.
A lot of people have stopped listening now once they found out that was how we started. because there is a hierarchy in some people's minds of those who were into Formula One before DTS and those after. It's like lorddom and serfdom in ancient Britain. Like we are considered the serfs, the workers of the land, those who aren't born into landed gentry or royalty, because we came to the sport through a Netflix TV show. But I'm okay with that because I'm living my best life, enjoying it.
We'll do our best. We'll do our best to spread the good word. So I agree with you about something feeling right in the world with Ferrari taking on Hamilton. And what's been surprising to me this weekend as I watched the practice and quali session for the Chinese Grand Prix, how natural it seemed for there to be a yellow helmeted red driver in a Ferrari. And they showed a clip of the previous year's race, a sprint race and quali, and it was Lewis in the Mercedes. And for a moment there, I had to work out, who is this? It was amazing how, for me, quickly, I've switched into Lewis is a Ferrari driver and this is exactly the thing. I don't think of him as a Mercedes driver anymore, even though he spent 8 years there successfully winning championships left, right and centre. And so I think there's something interesting about that. And I've realised that out of the possibilities of fandom, I'm a driver fan more than a team fan. So
100%.
Even though I'm wearing merch, it's actually the drivers that matter most. It's the storylines. And I think that's why Drive to Survive works so well, because it puts more of an emphasis on the people who are doing these crazy things, not so much the sport of it.
Do you know what I felt watching Lewis in a Ferrari rather than a Mercedes? And I think this is bearing out now in the season, is that obviously Mercedes had a few bad years, really bad years, particularly with their new kind of side podless car. But it's already bearing out that the Mercedes is a good car this season, but not a great car. And the gamble that Lewis took with Ferrari, in my mind, is this could be a great car or it could be a really shambolic car. But I feel like that's what you get with Ferrari. You get like either a brilliant year or like something that just catches on fire on the side of the road all the time. And do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if I can say this, but it's very Italian. It's spirited, it's erratic, it's passionate. And you might just sign on to Ferrari and get a really bad car. But you might sign on to Ferrari and get the prancing horse. And I think this year, like I'm just sitting here looking at the results, and it seems to me that there's 3 teams who are going to be up the front. I might be proven wrong. Upgrades come, upgrades go. But it feels like, McLaren potentially the car to beat, particularly around tyre wear and stuff. But Ferrari and Red Bull, particularly Red Bull with Verstappen, right up there in the mix. I think we're going to have a very interesting season.
Yeah, I think it's the deal. It's written into the contract almost that with Ferrari, when you sign, you're in for a wild ride and you don't know what you're going to get. The other reflection I have on the Australian Grand Prix in particular is I remember watching onboards from Ferrari and from Mercedes from 2 years ago and how much porpoising there was going around, especially as they get up to turn 9. And this season, none of it. They've fully ironed that out. Even though it's the last season of the ground effect cars, they've nailed it. And I think that's a really good thing, because I remember there being lots of stories around physical pain from driving these cars on circuits. Like
spinal damage.
Yeah, I remember Lewis getting out, I think it was last year in Azerbaijan, and just hobbling around afterwards. Yes, he's older, but also those cars seem to be, they're really rough on the drivers physically.
And it's funny that happened almost mid-cycle of the regs, isn't it? Yeah, it's interesting as they began to like push the cars in certain directions. That's because it wasn't just Mercedes who had the porpoising. Other teams struggled with the porpoising as well. But what we should expect from this season is the final year of a regulation. We should expect and hope for everything to be quite tight at the front, because everyone's been on a journey for a number of years and the cars should converge to some kind of delta at this point. And I think that's what we're going to see. McLaren, the talk is that McLaren's tyre deg is one of the things, apart from its straight line speed, the way it leans on it can lean a lot harder on its tyres. Interesting to watch the China sprint qualifying. I don't know if we want to talk about that, but interesting that it didn't quite play out for them in the China sprint qualifying.
I think let's save that. Let's save that for another topic.
For a
but
future.
I do think it's an interesting point about the three top teams and how Red Bull have this chronic second driver issue. I rate Liam very highly. I've seen him drive. He nearly won the DTM championship 2 years ago. He was on his way to win that championship when he got taken out in the last race on the fifth lap or so. So he came so close to winning. That was the same year that Alex Albon was teammates to him there. I rate him highly. He nearly won the Super Formula Championship as well in Japan. Top driver coming into what is easily the most difficult car. I think he's got a harder job to deal with than even Bortoleto, who's driving what one might expect to be a bit of a tractor, but they do seem to be getting good results out of it in the kick Sauber. But poor second driver in any Red Bull season, because you really get made to look average.
Yeah, and there's two things about that, right? It's that Max is such an exceptional driver, whether you like him or not, and I know the world is divided on this issue, whether you find his tactics palatable or not, he has proven himself to be someone who can drive the best Red Bull car that's on the track, at its finest, and one that's troublesome, and still win it, like we saw last year for the second half of the year, still win a championship with a car that, as he described, was a monster. The other thing I have heard is that, I don't know, this is me straying into areas I'm not an expert on, but the car is very much designed towards his driving style. And I don't know how that affects the setup of the garage next door. But yeah, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
I think the thing that makes it challenging is the feedback that he gives pushes the team and the engineering and the trackside engineering team to certain outcomes. And then the other driver, that data is almost useless to them because they just can't extract the same thing that Verstappen can. Yeah. And to me, it has a huge parallel with Schumacher in the early noughties at Ferrari. The second driver struggled in much the same way. So Eddie Irvine and Rubens Barrichello both had difficulty even just trying to reach Michael Schumacher on a bad day. And he had this ability to take whatever crappy car he was given, whether it was the best or the worst Ferrari in any given year, and extract the maximum out of it. And that was the expectation that he had on himself. And I see that same dynamic play out with Verstappen. And he just is able to turn up. And I saw some comment from Lawson yesterday about how it's hard to deal with Max because he doesn't need the warm-up time, the same warm-up time that another lesser driver might need. So Red Bull could be in a position this year where they could win the Drivers' Championship again, but have no hope in hell of winning the Constructors' Championship because they're essentially a single driver team at the moment. And that's no shade to Lawson. I think he's a top-notch driver, but he is not going to succeed, I think, in that car, in that environment, through just the environment that he finds himself in.
And it's the most brutal of all the teams, and it's the team that you get the flick from the quickest. Checo somehow, lots of reasons why that might have been, hung on the longest, but you do not survive in Red Bull very long if you're not in good positions, getting good race results. And Lawson has had a very tough start. He will be, and I think of Red Bull as a team like the Karate Kid movie, the original Karate Kid with the guy in black, where it's a team driven, I think, by high expectation and high fear. And for some drivers, that can almost end their time with Red Bull before it even begins. I think you know that the blade is hanging over you from day one.
I think Max thrives in that environment because that's his family environment too, by all accounts. Jos has got a very similar dynamic in the way that he parents him. And I'm getting this from Max's comments on the record himself, the kinds of stories that you hear Max talk about, what it would be like if he didn't perform when he was growing up. But I think that, again, to use the word crucible, that has created the gem that is Max Verstappen in terms of his success.
Well, we talked about this trackside, I think, Jason, when we were in Melbourne, this idea, that kind of, let's call it tough love with a small L in front of the word love, either makes or breaks athletes. And I think you're right. That crucible will refine you into pure gold, and it has done Max. I don't I don't encourage that or support that in the way that I raise my family. But yeah, it will either make you or it will like psychologically break you. And I think you're spot on when you say that has made him. Yeah, very interesting family and team dynamic. And to be honest, mate, from Lewis's accounts, his father maybe wasn't quite a Jos Verstappen, but I mean, in some ways wasn't far off. Very brutal in terms of his father's desire for him to win above all else. To the point that they were estranged for quite some time.
I don't know much about Lewis's younger years. I've got to go back and dig into that. Okay, so looking ahead then to the rest of the season, your comments are it's McLaren's to lose. Can we have you on the record? Is that where you think the season's going?
Well, unlike you, I have just watched the sprint, and I'm going to have to water down that opinion a little bit. I'm not going to say anything because, do you know what? I got a text message from a friend last night. As soon as the sprint quali was done, he texted me saying, Hamilton, P1. And I was like, dude, I am feeding the kids. I was going to watch that after bedtime.
No spoilers.
You never ever do, like, honestly, it's the worst thing you can do is to shoot off a message to someone as soon as the result comes in, because they might be working late at work, they might be doing kids' bath and dinner, they might have been waiting for the moment to turn on the TV when the kids are in bed and watch it fresh. So people out there listening, do not text your friends. I told him from now on I want a 24-hour embargo. We live in different countries. I'm in Australia, you're in the UK. I said to him, do you want me to text you at 2 a.m. when I'm watching the sprint? Do you want me to text you and tell you, the first thing that you wake up to, George, is the result before you get
the finishing order?
No, sir. You do not, sir. You do not. So never do. I address it now.
Here's my advice and my approach is to ask, did you see the something? That's the only thing that you can do, because then they can say, yes, oh my God, what about this? And if they don't, then you don't spoil.
Ask an open question. It's like, yeah, it's fantastic. But what do I feel about this year? I feel there are 3 top teams, and I feel at this stage that they are McLaren, I think, strongest. I think Ferrari would be number 2. I think Red Bull number 3, but I think they'll get there. And I think Mercedes number 4, but I also think with upgrades they'll get there. So I think they're the 4 that we'll be watching at the top. I'm very much hoping for a really good year for Alex Albon. I'm hoping for a really good year for Carlos Sainz. I think it's a better Williams than we might have seen for a while. So I'd like to see them at the top of the mid to lower field.
Why is it that this is something I see around the traps? Why do we give Williams so much love? What is it about Williams that gets us back time after time thinking maybe this is the year that we get some more glory?
Because they've got the least money of all teams. Their drivers tend to be quite nice people. Their team principal now, we like James, like we think he's like a bit of a geek, but maybe we're all a bit geeky, and I don't know. There's just something so stripped down and basic. Okay, we love the underdog story.
And another
Kick, just even though Kick are the real underdog, there's just something. Is it the toxic green car? Is it not knowing how to actually pronounce the full name of the team because you can't remember all the words? Is it the feeling that it's not even a real team, it's just glued together? It's Williams. Williams are the underdog team. We want to see them back.
If Kick was still known as Sauber, that might be a different story. And if it was still Peter Sauber's team and it was still doing the good thing as an independent, like Williams was up until a few years ago when they got bought out, I think it would be a different story. I think it's the sort of underdog and independent story. And I think we can't wrap without a mention of the late Eddie Jordan, who I think definitely falls into that camp of the independent underdog, scrapyard dog, having that kind of approach to running a team. Do you have any memories of Eddie? Did he predate your interest in the sport or your...
He did, yeah, he did. But you share some of yours.
The very first time Michael Schumacher drove an F1 car, it was a Jordan. It was a Jordan 191 in 1991. He drove at Spa-Francorchamps, and he qualified 7th, I think, something like that. So Michael Schumacher owes his start in F1 to Eddie Jordan. The other fond memory I have is of the same track, different year, 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, where David Coulthard spun out on the opening lap after turn 1. And you got to go back and have a look at the highlights of this. It's like Skittles. It's a wet weather race. Coulthard's facing sideways. Half of the grid crashes in behind him in the spray. And then you get this amazing scenario of all these drivers racing back to the pits to try and get into the third car because their car was destroyed. So they're essentially foot racing their teammate to get back to the pits first to get into the spare car. So that race, chaos reigned left, right and centre. And it was the Jordans that won. That was their very first win. And it was Damon Hill who came in first ahead of Ralf Schumacher. And that was Eddie Jordan and Jordan Grand Prix's first F1 victory. So those are two memories that stand out to me, both Belgian-oriented.
I love it.
But yeah, he passed away on Thursday after a battle with cancer. And I didn't realise this was what he was going through because he had a really good podcast called Formula for Success with David Coulthard. And there was lots of banter right up until the end. So for me, it's a sad moment. Another milestone in that journey away from the independent, scrappy underdog teams.
Yeah. And remember, Williams had glory days as well. They had incredible glory days. And I think in the same way that everyone is longing for Ferrari to have their glory day. When was the last time that Ferrari won a world championship? Drivers' championship? 2007? 7. Yeah. It's been a minute. It's been 2 decades.
But that's certainly not the underdog that we're rooting for. That's the establishment that we're rooting for. But we don't understand why. We just fall in love with the red and the yellow.
We do. Well, look, what a great chat. What a great time. Catch up on F1. I'm excited for you to now go and watch, if you get the space and time in the next few hours, to go and watch the sprint, because it is fantastic. And we get to see, no spoilers, but we get to see, maybe some shifts in some expectations for the year ahead in terms of what the cars can do and how they deal with tyre wear and all sorts of interesting stuff. And some straight line speed. Enjoy for those who haven't watched it, and you enjoy it.
Thank you. I do like the Shanghai International Circuit. It's very different to the Albert Park circuit that we were at last week, but I very much look forward to it, and I look forward to chatting with you some more in the near future.
Yes. Can't wait.
Okay. Thanks, mate.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Fresh Rubber Podcast. Join us next time as we review the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix.